you so much, everyone. So you say it's Nigeria one day, some news. And the one that is coming today is that if you are a banking person, either in business or not, you might have to pay some more other than what you have been paying already in terms of transaction on businesses. And so the Central Bank of Nigeria today has directed banks to start charging 0.5% cybersecurity levy. The central bank today directed all the deposit money banks in the country to begin the transactions or the charges of this levy within the next 2 weeks from yesterday. I mean, the directive and the circular from the CBN was dated May the 6th, 2004, and it's directed to all commercial, merchant, non-interest and payment service banks, as well as mobile money operators and payment service providers. And now, this is pursuant, according to the CBN, to the Cybercrimes Prohibition Prevention Amendment Act of 2024, and pursuant to that section 44, which stipulates that a levy of 0.5%, equivalent to 0.5% of all electronic transactions valued by the business specified in the second schedule of the Act, is to be remitted to the National Cybersecurity Fund, the NCF, which shall be administered by the Office of the National Security Advisor. The part of that circular reads, and also went further to give exemptions to some of these, the directive. The exemptions to these directive includes transaction in interbranch transfers within a bank, check clearing and settlements, letters of credit, banks recapitalization related funding, and only bulk funds movement from collection account, savings and deposits, including transactions involving long-term investments, amongst others. Well, of course, we know that the CBN has been pushing different directives as to how to regulate transactions online, especially. We saw what happened with OPay and PalmPay and some other fintech-related banking applications, which has now, they've told them that they should pause onboarding processes in all of these platforms. Of course, we know that the government of Nigeria is in court with Binance, one of the online platform, and the EFCC recently had come out to say, in fact, there is another, the P2P, which says transact in billions of naira and is away from the sight of government or the agencies that are regulating the industry. And this, they say, oppose a national security threat. Let's discuss these issues, shall we? I have a security expert tonight, and we'll be joined later on by a senior advocate of Nigeria also to give us insight into the legality of this. A member of a former member of the House of Representatives and a security expert, Honorable Aliyu Gebi, joins us live here in our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, Honorable, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
How does this directive of the CBN come to you as a person?
Well, I'm glad you have a very senior, learned lawyer who will speak to the legalese and the legalities. But as a private citizen, of course, when something is broken the way that it was broken by the CBN, there is trepidation, there's apprehension, just like you said. It's just a case of another levy on top of levies on top of levies. But if you sit down, take a step back and look at the nuances, the crux of what the CBN put out, you see that a lot of people are actually insulated from the 0.5%. Now, there is no gainsaying in stating the obvious fact that one of the most unregulated, most dangerous space that portends some of our greatest national security challenges today is a cyberspace. Every single day you see EFCC allegedly rounding up Yahoo boys, etc., and etc. And I doubt there's anyone in this studio whose either email has not been compromised before or WhatsApp. Now, Nigeria has been postponing the full implementation of these internationally agreed protocols since 2015. You may recall I was in Parliament then in 2015. I think it was in April or thereabouts. The Cybercrime Act was passed into law. But we could not fully operationalize it because of the certain constraints that we were undergoing, especially the security challenge and where funds were being directed to. But here we are today, where it is an absolute necessity if we know how much money we are losing, the banks are losing, account holders are losing, the government is losing, et cetera, because of weak implementation of cybersecurity protocols, I mean, we would pay the government more money to ensure that the government, the NSA, implements it. For example, Binance. If not for the bravery of Malam Nuhu Ribadu, who must be congratulated, who would have thought that it is possible to do what was done to Binance? And who would have thought the consequential direct derivative effect will be felt? When the person was arrested, there was a lot of uproar, but when the realities begin to kick in, people understood it. Maybe Gen Z are too young to understand what P2P means. In our days, during Napster, where you used to trade music, instead of buying directly to go buy the CD, people were trading music illegally directly, so bypassing copyright laws and infringing on the earnings. Correct. This is what it means when it is unregulated. So you have an invisible transaction space that is unregulated. And at the end of the day, no matter how much some people, a few, are making, the large collective is actually losing and rendering us more vulnerable. Nigeria is more prone to cyber attacks than any other developing nation in the world, considering the size and might of our economy, considering the adversarial presence we have around us, considering the internal security problems that we have. There is, again, no gainsaying the National Security Advisor, as the coordinator of all security agencies in Nigeria, must do the needful. Doing this needful requires funding. Everyone knows Nigeria at this point is not earning as much as it should be or could be. And there seems to be a lot more worries than there should be. But if you look at it, put them on a scale in relation to insecurity, how do the bandits get away with all the hundreds and tens of billions that they collect in ransom? Again, it is because of the weakness of our cybersecurity, cybercrime acts and laws. NFIU needs this. EFCC also needs this. And the citizens also need this for protection. Sometimes you get money taken out of your account and you don't know where to run to. Is it CBN? Is it EFCC? Is it NFIU? What the NSA is saying, technically speaking, is the buck stops at my desk. You are paying for this service, and I will ensure that whatever infringements are done upon you in the cyberspace, I will get recourse for you, and you can hold the NSA accountable for that. So we have to begin to streamline and sanitize these things. Yes, if you look at the exemptions, almost everyone is exempted from it. But again, because we are so worried because of other tangential worries in Nigeria, we do not take the time to study the documents, and we do a poor case of strategic communications. I believe the CBN should have communicated this better. I believe consensus should have been built, advocacy, enlightenment, getting people to understand what their money is going to buy them in the short, medium, and long term.
Right. So my role as a journalist is to be in the middle. And my job is also to take government accountable to the Nigerian people. Today, I beg to stand on the side of the people. Nigerians, don't you think, are standing too much on eggshells in terms of the burden of tariffs on levies that are being charged? Does the government look like a government that is sensitive to the plight of the people? I mean, electricity tariff, which day was it? Within the frame of 1 month, Nigerians are being slammed here and there with tariffs. It doesn't look like the government of the day is sensitive and is aware and apprised of the pains of the people. Then you come again. Even if an average citizen is not going to be affected by this, the mere hearing the psychological effect of being slammed with yet another levy, it just makes you go out of your mind.
I couldn't agree more, but this is the beauty of participatory democracy. If you don't like it, go to court. Let the courts intervene.
But what is the essence of the government? The government is for the people.
Absolutely. And
but when the government is acting as though they do not understand they are governing the people, because the Nigerian people may not be able to speak for themselves, the media should speak for the Nigerian people. Yes, you said the communication might be a problematic one, but again, it's sensitivity to the issues of now. How can the government come around again with inflation at 33%, unemployment rate at over 33%, and food inflation off the roof, and yet you're coming again with yet another levy announced to the public?
First and foremost,
do they look like there are people that are sensitive?
You know, perception is not necessarily reality, frankly speaking. If you drive around Abuja now, everybody will agree that Wike is working, whether you like him or you don't like him. However, when he started, even I myself faulted him. Wike is doing things as if he's the king of Abuja, as if he's a governor in River State. demolishing this today, demolishing that tomorrow, thereby creating and exacerbating the security challenge in Abuja because he's uprooting people who hitherto have had places to stay. But now everybody will tell you Wike is working. If Wike is working, ergo, by inference, that means President Tinubu's administration is working. And everyone will agree to the fact that after El Rufai, you can hardly say we've had a minister of Abuja until Wike that is here. That is an arguable fact, but this is my own statement of fact. It's the same with the security space. It is a tapestry of interconnectedness. One thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. And if you don't do the right thing from the beginning, you will pay the price later in the future. Yes, I did not agree, I still do not agree with the arbitrary increase in the tariff of electricity. I don't agree with it. It may be the right thing to be done. Is the timing right? That's a question to be answered. Is it the possibility to postpone it, and so on and so forth? If you recall, in January 4th of 2012, yes, 2012, when the Goodluck Jonathan administration unilaterally removed subsidy, we took to the streets. I was in Parliament. We led protests. We knew it was the right thing to do, but what we fought against, what we questioned was the methodology and the timing. And the fact that consensus was not built, there was no sensitization, there were no safety nets put in place. It's the same thing that is happening right now. There are some band-aids that have to be ripped at the same time. At
the cost of the Nigerian people.
Not at the cost.
Is it the levies that are going to be used to raid the bandits on cyberspace? Or, I mean, because I still don't, because I need to ask you, you were in Parliament at that time, what is the intendment of the drafters of this section when they're talking about charging the 0.05%?
No, I was not in Parliament when that was done. This was done after I left Parliament.
No, it was actually captured in the 2015 portion, but you know, that bill, I mean, that act has also been amended in 2024.
You are absolutely correct. It is the amendment that enforces to operationalize this component. It wasn't there before, and it wasn't there before. It wasn't operational before, again, because of the security challenges Nigeria was going through. We were fighting a war. All our resources were geared towards the Northeast. There was no space for anything else. The NSA's function at that particular point in time was to stabilize the Northeast, win the war. Now we've won the war. We're about to win the peace, but we cannot win the peace when tens and hundreds of billions of naira disappear overnight.
Have we won the war yet?
We've won the war. It's just winning the peace. We are yet to win the peace, but we have won the war.
You're from the
I'm from the Northeast.
You're from Bauchi. You represented.
I have lost family. I have lost friends.
Would you say that there are no threats again within the Northeastern region?
Threats will forever remain, but we are at the consolidation phase now, where we are dealing with a severely degraded and dismantled enemy. The enemy's capacity to wreak havoc is down by, at the minimum, 85%. That is a fact. Borno State people will tell you this. Bauchi people will tell you this, even if Kano people don't know that. We have won the war in the Northeast. We are about to win the peace. Winning the peace requires non-kinetic strategies.
What about the North Central and the North?
Oh, we are applying the same tactics that we have learned. The dynamics are a little bit different. Yes, you do have some funneling of other actors coming in, but predominantly the dynamics, again, of the conflict differ. In the North Central, you essentially have a conflict that is steeped in traditional grievances and unaccountability in terms of people committing things that should not be committed but not being held accountable. So, and again, back to your question, we are beginning to see, again, in my opinion, and you know me, I'm a critic. If it works, I'll tell you. If it doesn't work, I'll tell you. And again, by training, I'm a software engineer. I studied computer science and advanced mathematics. This is what I do. This is what I did before I even joined government. The intent of the bill is right. The time is ripe. Is the time ripe for other things? Now, this is a question that should be asked, but is the time ripe for us to fully operationalize our Cybersecurity Act and the Cybercrime Act of 2015 as amended? Yes, it is. And again, we don't do a good job of communication. This is our problem. We don't communicate strategically. When the superhighway in Lagos started, again, there was a lot of uproar. Again, because there was no strategic communications, people did not understand what is happening or the value they will get eventually when it happens. Now we have an NSA who is playing the role that an NSA should be playing, which is coordinating the security agencies and ensuring that anything that poses a security threat to the nation is dealt with. I ask you again, every single day, how many young people do you see EFCC parading for Yahoo, aka cybercrime? Too many. The porosity cannot be comprehended because we assume we are secure. If Nigerian banks were to open up to how much money they've been losing through cybercrime, perhaps everybody will run to take their money out because you realize that your monies are not safe. And this is not something that a country can implement in isolation. The most powerful countries in the world get hacked almost on a daily basis. The hackers evolve, your security policy and protocols have also to evolve to counter. So for me, is the timing right? The timing has been right and ripe for a very, 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 very long time. The methodology of the implementation perhaps could have been better. The communication strategy could have been better. And again, the beauty of participatory democracy here, when you and I, we have representatives at the local government, at the state level, and at the federal. Let those who we have voted in to represent us gauge our temperature and ask for perhaps postponement, deferment, or perhaps to ask for more explanation. What we should be asking for really is about oversight. How is that money going to be spent? Who oversights that money? What layers of the cybersecurity spectrum will that money be spent on? What is the recourse? I'm sure the lawyer will talk about this. If my money gets taken away from me, or if I get perhaps threatened, or if I get blackmailed by cyber criminals, how do I get, or how do I seek recourse? Then lastly, don't forget there are nation states in this world that have fine-tuned cyber criminality to become a weapon of mass destruction. Some rogue states use cyber criminal acts in developing nations like ours with weak oversight, with weak security protocols, to steal our money without us even knowing that our monies have been stolen. How many times do you receive bank alerts? This has been debited, that has been debited. As long as it is below a certain threshold, you don't really care, because those who even bank are the bankable. The unbankables actually outnumber the bankables by a number staggering to even mention.
Just a few hours ago, the United Kingdom Defense Department made a statement that the UK government made a statement that China may have been behind an infiltration of his system. And one we wonder if such an attack is imminent on a country as the United Kingdom, a country like Nigeria. Man, in fact, there are those who will tell you that, man, sometimes some infiltration, in fact, is occurring in Nigeria that we may not even know.
You are absolutely correct. In fact, the last person to know if there's an infiltration is the owner of the system. The last person to know that a thief has visited his house is the owner of the house. When you see your things missing, you don't see the thief. You only notice that the things have been missing. And this is what this act, this law, seeks to mitigate. We are more vulnerable than we think we are, and we are more important than we give ourselves credit for. And all our infrastructure are now moving into cyberspace, so we become more vulnerable by that. Our power grid, for example, our hydro dams, etc., etc. So it's not just about money.
So, but the question is that if you're asking and you're supporting that there should be levies to be used by the state in terms of protection of cyberspace or the securing of our territorial integrity, the question would be, we had so much money under this Dasuki regime as the NSA. I'm not sure that the NSA office has ever been in short supply of money. In fact, funding for security in Nigeria is a hush-hush business, because a lot of people will say, don't let us dig too much, we can't make it too much public because it's a national security matter. There are those who will argue and dispute your fact of saying that we needed more money. There are those who will say Nigerians have been burdened enough by different taxes and different layers of levies. For you now to advocate more taxes on the citizen, for government to do the job in which they have been elected for, could be unfair.
Now, let me ask you a rhetorical question. If VAT was increased in the favorite restaurant where you go and eat, the place where you love your steak, and VAT was increased, will you agree to pay the VAT? Yes or no? You will pay the VAT because you like that steak. You have developed this taste for that specific steak. It is not the man in the village who is looking for millet to eat to feed his family that is going to pay the VAT increase. It is you, the elite. It is you who understands the taste, the delicacy of this steak, and the pedigree of the chef and the restaurant, right? Now, you can't have your cake and eat it. You are saying security spending is not transparent. Now it is moving to full transparency.
How
because you know.
Does the law says how it's going to be transparent?
Well, the
law just tells us where the money is going to be domiciled.
Again, if you recall 17 minutes ago, I said what we should be asking for is oversight. Let us know how that money, my 0.5% that I am paying to protect me from cyber attacks, how it is going to be spent, by whom it is going to be spent, when will it be spent, and how do I get an oversight participation in how it is going to be spent? These are the questions that we should be asking. And 2 weeks can become a month, as long as the right questions have been asked. And it should be oversighted. And Cybersecurity and Cybercrime Act and so on did not start overnight. There has been a council at ONSA for a very, very, very long time.
So why is it that this government is the one that is implementing it when the citizens are so burdened? Well, allow you to answer that question, and I'll be bringing the senior advocates of Nigeria after we've taken this break, everyone. We'll be right back. much, everyone, for staying with us right here on the program. The Cybersecurity Levy, as erected by the Central Bank of Nigeria, gets our attention tonight. And I've been speaking with a former member of the House of Representatives and a security expert, Honorable Aliyu Igedi. He's been speaking with us right here in our Abuja studio. Of course, I understand now being joined by a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Adegoke, who Adegoke. He joins us from Lagos. Thank you so much, Leonard Sik, for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Yeah, thank you so much indeed. Give us an understanding of, as a citizen, of course, before we get the insight of law, give us what you make of that directive when you heard it.
Well, the moment I heard of the directive of the Central Bank of Nigeria directing that there should be 0.5% levy on every transaction conducted electronically in the banks, my feeling was one of annoyance, to be honest, because I feel that the time is not appropriate for such. And why I feel that the time is not appropriate is this. The law being implemented by the National Assembly, by the Central Bank of Nigeria, is the Cyber Crime Act of 2015, which was recently amended in 2024. And the provision requiring that 0.005% be levied was contained in the 2015 Act. Now, the directive by the CBN requiring 0.5% levy to be charged on every electronic transaction emanated from the 2024 amendment to the Act. With this position, one feels that the spectrum of the society that is going to feel it much more will be the people in the lower rungs of the economic ladder, whereas the rich, the elite, might not feel it as much, considering the volume of amounts that will be involved in the transactions they are going to be carrying out. What of the poor masses who always have issues with any charge as may be imposed by the bank? And we've had clients in so many cases who have come to complain about GTB, FCMB, Zenith Bank, or any other bank levying certain charges on their transactions, making certain deductions from their accounts. These are people whose margin of absorption any economic punch is very, very fragile and very, very weak. And when there is any levy introduced by the government or imposed by a service provider, you discover that this is the spectrum of society that complains most. And that is why introducing this levy at this moment or implementing this levy at this moment might not be too necessary, might not be accommodating of the interest of the masses, who will find it pretty difficult and economically important for the government to rather sympathize more with their plight. And that is why I feel that when such is going to be introduced by any government or is going to be implemented by any government, there must be sufficient cushions already provided with respect to other charges already imposed on the people. For instance, with the withdrawal of the subsidy, which although we heard is now being reintroduced but in a manner not made known to the people. With respect to the increase in the tariffs of electricity, charges or supplies, we find a situation where the mass of the people are already complaining. And when the economy is passing through a difficult process of this nature, it may be necessary for the government to relax a little such policies that the mass of the people may feel are not pro-people. And that is why I feel that the time for introduction of it is not good enough.
Yeah. Let me jump in quickly. So, I mean, for those who are wondering the magnitude or the quantum of this levy or what this amounts to in Naira, 1,000 Naira transaction, if it falls within the window of such a levy or charge, will be 5 Naira. 10,000 Naira, 50 Naira. 100,000 Naira, 500 Naira. 1 million Naira, 5,000. 10 million Naira, 50,000. 1 billion Naira, 5 million. If you're doing 100 billion, that is going to be about 500 million Naira. That is how much. So when we wonder, where do you put the profit of these businesses in which you are levying the taxes? But let's talk about some legal issues before I bring you back to the plight of the average citizen. Now, my question is, can the CBN give a directive outside of the establishment laws? The CBN is established by the CBN Establishment Act, upon which the CBN gets its powers, which of course the act derogates its powers also from the Constitution of Nigeria. But can the CBN, for example, act on a Cyber Crimes Act of 2024, for example?
Yes, the CBN is empowered when it comes to regulation of banking transactions by virtue of the CBN Act. And in this regard, we are talking about levy that is chargeable in respect of electronic transactions. Electronic transactions are substantially carried out with the involvement of the banks. You discover that it is not possible for me to transfer money to your account without passing through a bank or a financial institution or a medium that is providing such a service. To that effect, there is no way the CBN will not be involved. However, it is very important to realize that the CBN cannot act outside the provisions of an act that has established it or that has imposed responsibilities that may require the CBN to perform certain functions or the other. That is why I believe that the involvement of the CBN in terms of the directives to the banks on what is chargeable on electronic transactions cannot be said to be outside the jurisdiction of the Central Bank of Nigeria. It is still the CBN that can issue directives to the banks, not the Office of the National Security Advisor or any other such body. In fact, the EFCC cannot just issue directives to the banks the way it feels. Otherwise, there might be overlap of functions that may bring some of these agencies into conflict with one another. So that is why it is important that the Central Bank of Nigeria will be involved in the process of imposing such a levy and how it ought to be administered. There are other issues which probably when your questions will gravitate towards those, I'm going to address them.
So it is right, lawful, and tried for the CBN to be able to act upon an act that is outside of its jurisdiction, like the Cyber Crimes Act. For example, those who are giving the CBN, the federal government, 48 hours ultimatum to redress on these and retract the directive. Otherwise, they will go to court. Sarah, for example, had issued a statement to say they're asking the federal government to retract. So you're saying whatever the CBN has given as a directive today is lawful.
Not at all. That is not my conclusion. What I'm saying is that the question you asked is whether the CBN can issue a directive with respect to the implementation of maybe a provision of the Cyber Crime Act. However, where I'm going, what I'm saying is that when it comes to the constitutionality of the act itself with respect to imposition of levy and the purpose for which it is meant, that is another kettle of fish. That is a different issue altogether. What will be my conclusion is that the provision of Section 44(2) of the Cyber Crime Act as amended in 2024 is a provision that is unconstitutional in itself. That doesn't affect the entirety of the Cybercrime Act. We must make a distinction between the unconstitutionality of a provision within an entirety of a law and the law in its own entirety. And what we are saying here is that when you look at the provision of Section 44 of the Cybercrime Act as amended in 2024, imposing the levy of 0.5, because it interpreted 0.5, in bracket it put 0.005, which according to those who are learned in mathematics, they said they are not the same thing. However, the provision goes further to say that this amount that it is talking about is 0.5% of the amount involved in any electronic transaction. The implication is that the law here is talking about 0.5% and not 0.005% as contained in the 2015 Act. However, the law says that any such collection, any such tax, any such levy as may be collected from electronic transactions as cybersecurity levy shall go into an account with the CBN, which shall be implemented by the Office of the National Security Advisor. That provision itself is unconstitutional. That is the provision that we need to understand unconstitutional.
Can you explain to us
and to that extent,
the unconstitutionality of that?
Yes.
Just a moment, Mr. Adegoke,
right.
Because SERAP is of the opinion also, and legally they are saying that it's against the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, and is also against the Constitution of Nigeria, the Section 44. But I'd like you to, just in about 60 seconds, explain your position and your own view as to the illegality or the unconstitutionality of Section 44. Why do you think it's unconstitutional? Why do you think SERAP is also thinking that this is a flagrant disabuse of the rights of the Nigerian citizen as enshrined in the African Charter on Human and People's Rights?
Thank you. What point of unconstitutionality we are putting across is this. By Section 162 of the Constitution in the first place, Section 162(1) in this instance, all revenues of the Federation shall go into the Federation account, from where it will be shared among the 3 tiers of government, the federal, the state, and the local governments. The implication is that all revenues, as defined by Section 162(10), subsection 10 of the Constitution, will amount to any income, any receipts accruable to the federal government from whatever transaction. The implication is that no arm of government or no agency of government or the National Assembly itself cannot appropriate such revenue before to do any other thing or to achieve any other goal until it goes first into the Federation account. Now, whereby the Cyber Crime Act, as amended, is now saying that levies collected on electronic transactions shall not go to the Federation account, but shall go to an account with the CBN, from where the National Security Advisor can use it for the purpose of fighting cybercrime. that is unconstitutional. No organ of government, no agency of government, not even the National Assembly as an arm of government can make a law that will be inconsistent with the provision of the Constitution. If Section 44 of the Cybercrime Act is now unconstitutional by virtue of saying that levies collected shall go into an account other than the Federation account, then the directive of the Central Bank of Nigeria saying that levies to be collected shall be implemented by the National Security Advisor will equally be unconstitutional. You cannot build something on nothing, it will collapse. That is on one hand. Yeah. Now, with respect to the contention of SERAP, with respect to the provisions of African Charter, with provisions to the Constitution, the fundamental rights and what have you, I believe, I've not seen what brief SERAP is filing or what they have filed or the angle they're actually coming from. But as a human rights activist myself, as somebody who believes in the fact that Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which contains the fundamental directives and objective principles of the Federation, as contained in the Constitution, ought to be made justiciable. What are these fundamental objectives? What are these principles?
Yes. We were totally out of time. But thank you so much indeed for this legal expose. And I must sincerely thank you so much indeed for giving us some insight into the legalese and the legal perspectives on all of this. Thank you so much, Mr. Kunle Adegoke, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thank you so much indeed. Let me give you just 10 seconds to give me your final thought on this.
10 seconds. Well, for me, this is the beauty of democracy. But what amuses me and amazes me with Nigerians all the time is we shout out after the fact. This process started in 2015, as we discussed, as the learned Silk alluded also. Where were they when National Assembly was enacting this act before it was passed into law? From 2015 to 2024, how many years? Where were they when these things were passed and amended in the current legislature? Where were they? Where was the uproar? I must give SERAP this. SERAP has been consistent, but there needs to be this citizen engagement in terms of laws and processes of laws. Otherwise, we'll keep screaming after the fact.
All right. Thank you so much, Honorable Aliyu Gebi and Mr. Kunle Adegoke, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching tonight. And that's our show. I'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. God bless Nigeria.